Do you now agree with me? Do you now admit that the best player in the PSL is Lucas Ribeiro Costa?
Not a one game showing.
Can
I let me say.
Chuck, in a week where the President of the United States offered refugee status to some people from South Africa, is there a country that you would be willing to go be a refugee there? Would you want an invitation from a particular country?
To be a refugee, right? That makes me like B-class citizen. So, Angaz, is there a country? I can't think of one. All I know is home. Maybe that's why I can't think of any other one. So, my answer is no. There's no country that I'd pick.
Take me to Cape Verde now, Chuck. Take me to Cape Verde now. Don't even ask me questions multiple times over. Welcome to Two Up Front. My name is Jay, and as always, you just heard from him. I am with Chuck. How you doing, Chuck, after this sporting weekend?
I'm good. I'm brilliant. Could not be better.
Lies. Everything is lies. Because what? Tell us, why are you great and you couldn't be better?
Because I realized, you know what? Our coach said at the end of the season, in the title run, we'll be there. And that's all that matters.
Again, lies. Everything is lies.
Yeah, no, let's get into it, Jay, because you are pressing me for how I really feel. Loftus Versfeld was packed, Pirates visiting Sundowns, and it was horrible. The state of the pitch was horrible, therefore we couldn't play. But Jay, it was maybe an early title decider or maybe a signifier in terms of who's actually got the firepower to go all the way. Sundowns overwhelmingly beat Pirates and they looked very good in that game. How would you assess that game and what did you think both sides looked like?
Yeah, I did not expect for one. I really didn't. When I was asked about score predictions leading up to that match, I said I thought Sundowns would win it 1-0 though, or it's going to be 1-1, but I thought it was going to be a low-scoring affair. And that's on the basis of what I saw last season between these two teams and then what I've seen this season from the two teams even before they faced up against one another. Because when you go back to last season, the games in the league as well as in the cups, right? In the cups, you had the MTN8 final, which went to penalties, and then in the Nedbank Cup final, there was that last-minute winner by Urel, and that game ended 2-1. And then in the league clashes, I believe Sundowns won the one game 1-0, and then the other one was 1-1. So they've been fairly close. And then when you come into the 24-25 season, where Pirates have looked as good as they have, and it seems as if they've closed the gap, and by that I'm referring mostly to what we saw at the end of the league campaign, where Pirates were 23 points behind Sundowns. So I thought these two teams are evenly matched, and then when you consider the fact that there's stability over at Orlando Pirates with their coaching and their coach, and whereas at Sundowns Rolani left, and then there was Mangoba Mnite, and now there is Miguel Cardoso, and that seemed like a recipe for a close game, and maybe even as a neutral, you would have thought maybe Pirates might be able to come through. I did not expect 4-1, but based on what happened on the day, I can see why it ended up 4-1. First of all, if I talk about Pirates, Koki and Sbisi, they cannot be the centre back pairing. It doesn't work with the two of them. One of them with either Sesani or Nda, preferably at the very top in terms of the centre back pairing, it would be Sesani with Nda, because what happened on Saturday was not a good showing from both of them, particularly when they were asked to go mark in the wide areas, which I put on the coach because coming from the Soweto derby and seeing how Coach Nabi was utilizing Umodi, in that he was continuously getting into that space behind Dino. I would have thought that maybe Orlando Pirates would have not asked Dino to vacate that space, especially, and then playing a high line, because then that's another thing which I feel if you just watched the match between Mamelodi Sundowns and Kaizer Chiefs, that's the one in the cup where Sundowns won 4-0. You don't want to do that. And with Ukadoso, he implemented the right players because I thought playing Reyners and Shalulile at the same time, who are two players who I've not historically thought can play together since Reyners arrived at Sundowns. But the fact that they were not really there to occupy a space in the box, but to run the channels. And you saw Reyners with the second goal, Yaga Ribeiro, and him running down that left-hand side and going past Usbisa, I believe, at that point. And then there was another occasion, with the first goal from Ribeiro, where it's Koki who can't bring him down. And I also was looking at that and looking at the other goals and thinking to myself, why do Orlando Pirates not believe in tactical fouling? Pull these people down. That's what Ignacio Miguel did for Kaizer Chiefs. And it's don't watch a guy run from his own half and to go then to score a goal. What are you doing? Pull this man down.
But now you would have, except for, I don't know if you saw this, Rele was the one who was in pursuit, but he slips. And then for that point, he can't catch up anymore. Hence, it's coloring a pitch. But, I mean, we all know that even if the pitch was immaculate, chances are with what the team looked like, Pirates, they still wouldn't have won that game. So I think in that particular moment, I think the pitch had a part to play. But generally, I do agree with you, because if you foul him in the center circle, it's most likely to be a yellow card. You're not going to get a red. But if you are chasing like Kogi did, take the red, because from what they looked like in the beginning of the game, at least, they looked like they wanted to play deep and have a low block. So if you've got a red card, you'll play that like that anyway. So prevent the goal.
Yeah, prevent the goal, but I don't know if Pirates could have done much to prevent the goals that were scored. And where I think Mamelodi Sundowns won this game, and what I was most impressed with on the coaching side by Miguel Cardoso, adaptability to begin with. Because up to this point, right, well, in the last decade, we've thought of Mamelodi Sundowns as a possession-based side. In this game, Sundowns only had 39% of the ball, and they completed less than 300 passes. And usually you'll find them around the 600 pass mark. And they were content to play on the break, which, as I'm saying, is not something we've seen from a Sundowns team, regardless of who's been coaching, whether it's Pito or it's Rolani. And now with Cardoso, what I think he's done to make himself stand out from his predecessors is the fact that he's not married to an ideology. But whatever it is that is required to win the match, he'll go and do that. Because 3 of those goals came in transition. They came on the counter-attack, and then one of them came from a set piece. This is not something that you associate with Mamelodi Sundowns. Usually they have the ball, and I think sometimes this bogs you down. It's what you see with Manchester City at times as well, where you have so much of the ball and teams are sitting in the low block. And we saw Polokwane City being successful against Sundowns by letting Sundowns have all the ball. We saw Maniema in the Champions League as well have 6 defenders in front of their box, and Sundowns had 70% of the ball but could not score goals. And the adaptability to approach the game from another side was very impressive. Also, what was very impressive for me is the press from Sundowns. And I've mentioned this before. In his opening press conference, Miguel Cardoso, when was answering questions about his style of play, one of the things that he mentioned is that he wants to press high and he wants to counter press in those offensive positions. And then he came in following another game, I believe it was against Magesi. If not Magesi, was one of the teams that are languishing towards the bottom of the log in the PSL. And he said that he can't counter press because when these teams get the ball, they hoof it forward. So there's no opportunity, because you want to counter press a team who, when they win the ball, they want to play out. So against then a Pirates who do want to build from the back, or when they receive it, they're not just launching the ball long, even though we saw that quite a lot from Pirates in this game. But they do want to pass it around one another. They don't want to bypass the midfield all the time. And each time that happened, Mamelodi Sundowns were hounding those Pirates players in the middle, especially Umakaula. Even saw Ribeiro, who's not a man who's renowned for his defensive side of the game. He was constantly on Umakaula, even fouling him a few times. So when I say adaptability, I'm talking about the fact that in one match, you can recognize that, well, the counter press is not going to work. We need to do something else. In another one, you realize, okay, this team is going to want to hold on to the ball. We can counter press. And you also can go away from what has been your bread and butter, which is the possession-based style, and play on the counter. And then the other thing, which I thought was a big contributor to the victory for Mamelodi Sundowns, is individual superiority. Lucas Ribeiro, the 2 goals. It's the goal of course, that he runs from his own half and he scores. But even the second goal, like to finish from outside of the box with that pinpoint accuracy, and then later to see the home going be in that position, and now where the Pirates defense are a little weaker later in the game, and he has that shot and that finish from outside of the box. I thought that the Sundowns big players, they showed up, whereas on the Pirates side, you were looking for them.
I think when you speak of adaptability, Jay, I think that's where we lacked, and by that I mean, Talentambata out with injuries, Sesane out with injury, and the guys who we bring in could not adapt to what Sundowns were bringing. And I've always thought to myself that the one thing that Paris needed to add to their game, other than just being direct and playing this fluid and fast football, is being able to recycle the ball quite well, which I think would have been a very good thing to have in this game. But I think even in this game, we would have struggled because of the Sundowns press, as you said. I think as much as, yes, Ribeiro stood out as the star man on the day, generally the team was good, that is Sundowns, in terms of hounding down, in terms of just their work rate, right? And you expected the opposite, and you expected Pirates to be the ones who would work more, because Sundowns at home should have more possession, should want to play their style of football. And how we got close to Sundowns, or at least how we beat them in most of these games, that we stifled a lot of their play. There was a lot of disruption, a lot of pressing, a lot of high intensity stuff in terms of, if we don't have the ball, we'll outwork Sundowns. And it was the opposite in this game, because if you looked at the first 20 minutes when Pirates had the ball, there's a lot of passes backwards. Like, so guys, where's the confidence? So I was a bit confused in terms of how we wanted to set out in the first half, because there was half low block, half press in front. Then there was like gaps in the midfield for like 20 minutes. And you're like, so what are we planning on doing here? Also, Jay, I do agree with you in terms of there are questions over Rivera's selections. I mean, not the guy for this duel, not the guy for this battle. Yes, Talentambata has gone, but I don't think the guy who's more comfortable at number 10 is going to do the dirty work in midfield, which you have to do against Mamelodi Sundowns if you want to stop them playing. So maybe Oras Bucha should have played because he's an option on the bench. Maybe Miguel Tim should have come on. Maybe Ndlondo because he was also on the bench. Those players for me are a better fit for what you're trying to do against Sundowns versus Ukabelo Dlamini. So that was a bit disappointing in terms of the guys that we chose. Personnel, I do agree with you, Jay. Emova. Koki, this is only your second start in the league against Sundowns. And look, we've been exposed for pace, that the two centre-backs don't have it. On either flank, your Marcos, your Dino van Rooyen, they can chase back. But the guys in the centre, they don't have it. And as you're saying, against Pulamodi, you saw there's going to be trouble. But because we have Talentambata and Makaula, and obviously against an inferior midfield, it didn't happen too often. So we were able to deal with that. So speaking about that, Jay, Sundowns had the right personnel. Someone like Jaden Adams shone, I think, in that game where you're like, okay, it's high quality, big names, and he stood out and he was counted. Someone like Ribeiro, obviously. And obviously, these comparisons will come out, right, in terms of Relem Fukeng, Ribeiro.
No.
On the day.
No. We're not just moving past that. These comparisons will come up because
I am addressing that. I'm speaking about it.
Is this you coming around? Because I heard you earlier saying that you agree with me on another point that I've made, and so now I need to know: do you now agree with me? Do you now admit that the best player in the PSL is Lucas Ribeiro Costa?
Not on one game showing.
Let
me say.
Chuck, you are so stubborn. What do you need to see? What do you need to see? What more do you need to see? Dricus asked the question while he was quoting a movie line in terms of what did he say? Who's next?
Is there anyone else?
Is there anyone, Chuck? Is there anyone, period, to compare with Ribeiro? Not even just going directly at Urel. Anybody, Chuck. Chuck, I know you know football. Like, if you did not know football, I would not be sitting here doing this show with you. And I know you know football, but I also know that you're a hater. And sometimes you're so committed to drinking that haterade that, like, knowing what the truth is, you don't want to come around to what it actually is and what your eyes tell you. I know, based on the performance, your eyes told you. And I need you to admit it now.
Can I have my piece? Because I was about to go on.
Please go ahead.
A breakdown before you went on your soliloquy about Ribeiro. As I was saying, even though there will be those comparisons, on the day, the guy was head and shoulders above everyone. That goal was testament to his qualities, right? Not only is it the finishing, but it's the physical strength to hold off all the chases en route to goal. Number 2, the goal to find his brace. Pinpoint finishing. That was good. It was influential in the game. He was great. Mara. The pitch was horrible. Here
we go.
Look, the pitch was horrible. But even if it was good, like I said prior, I think Sundowns would have won. think Ribeiro is different gravy. I think he's good. I want to say this, Uguti. Yeah, right now I can give him the plaudit, but I'm not going to say Uguti in the league because what I've seen, right, is rather, let me put it this way: this performance in the league is the best performance by any individual this season so far in one game. That I can give him without a shadow of a doubt, right? But I've seen dips in form. If you go like 4 or 5 games back where you're like, where is Ribeiro for Sundowns when they need him, right? And other people have stood up. Those questions are being asked of Mfukeng in this game, in the game against Chiefs. And my thing is that there will be ebbs and flows, dips and peaks in their form. Let's wait a couple of games, Jay. Let's crown him player of the season at the end of the season. Asngachar. He can be front runner now. It's fine. I can give him that. But Asngachar.
I'm not talking about the end of the season and giving out awards. This is a debate we had, and we fell on two sides of this fence, and it's revisiting that right here, right now. Is there a better player in the PSL than Lucas Ribeiro Costa? You say yes or you say no?
No.
All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to hear, Chuck. That's all I wanted to hear.
All right, going on to Pirates, Jay. I think, as you said, injuries, right? And I think what's if we learn from this game, what's actually come out now is the fact that, as we've been worried and concerned about it the whole entire season, depth. When Talented Butter is not there, when Sun is not there, when Da is not there, what do you guys do? And I think those questions need to be answered quickly because what I'm seeing in Nkota, what I'm seeing in Mfukeng is that how many games have they played now? Over 20. They probably have the exploits of Africa and all these cup competitions is probably wearing on their legs now because, as we said, Pirates play a very intense game of football where they play fast, where they press hard, and they are running the entire game. And also, they've played the most games of anyone in the season, and they've never been in a season like this before. And now that they're in it, they're feeling the rigors of it. So I think players like Mfukeng, give him a rest, put him on the bench, let him come on late, or let him skip an entire game completely. Someone like Tito, I think at some point, remember when he came back, it was like, it's not quite Tito, and then he sparked on again because I think after a while you get fatigued. Sundowns are used to these things. Sundowns are used to this, and they've got a bigger squad, and they rotated quite well. So I think we're learning in terms of how to utilize our squad. And it was not the best game to try to figure out what is Koki fit enough. Not the game. Could Klamini plug in the whole forward Umbata? Not that game. But Jay, on the goals that Sundown scores, kudos to them, right? But for everything that they did good, I think Pirates did bad as well. Because as much as Allende put in a very good cross in terms of the right areas, okay, Kana, when he scores that goal, you're like, where's defense?
Closing him down.
Yeah, like where's the challenge at least? Let him win a duel and score that goal, right? Or Ribeiro, as you said, someone should have tugged his shirt. Someone should have done something. But also, when the ball from Tito goes to Udlamini, you could be more responsible with that pass where you're trying to take it. Because if you look at where it's intercepted and you look at the trajectory of that ball, it's not necessarily going to a Pirates player. So be more responsible with that ball, right? We all know he had sighters in the first half where you're like, guys, don't give him the space. You know what the guy's capable of. Many of you play with him in the senior team. You've seen him score crackers the entire campaign for Bafana. Don't do that. So goal number 4, we knew it was coming and we gave him space. So look, I think to round it off, Jay, it is what you pointed out in terms of Sundown's quality. That's what was on display, right? Not only from the players, I think the coach as well, in terms of, as you're saying, his personnel. I think, as you kept on saying, Sundowns don't quite have the speed to deal with Pirates. Not this version of Sundowns. Not with the addition of Reyners. Not with the inclusion of Morena in the side. I think they've got plenty of speed. I think the adaptability of Allende, Adams, Mukwena, I think they control the midfield quite well because it was a lone battle for Makaula in this game. He needed his partner in Talented Butter to try stifle them. And with him and just him in the midfield, it was a bit too much for him. And I think, shout out to Sundowns, I did not expect 4 myself. But at the end of the day, it's one of those games where after 4 goals, you're like, I have to respect it.
But you should have, Chuck, because Sundowns have given out quite the hands against Orlando Pirates historically.
That's true, right?
The PSL.
But what you said, though, in the last season, the seasons prior, things were coming close in terms of, okay, we'll struggle to beat, we'll draw with Stelis, we'll draw with Amazulu, but Sundowns will make a fight of it. We'll only lose 1-0. I know with the 3 or 4 seasons prior, there's 4s, there's 5s, there's 6s. I know those numbers, right? But it seemed like we had shaken that off. Cup finals, we seem to have shaken that off. To get blown away, this I did not see.
Do not see this one coming. Do you think, as a result of what happened on the weekend, the win as well as, of course, the points gap increasing between Mamelodi Sundowns and Orlando Pirates, this was a title decider, or is it too early to say that?
Sure. I think it's too early because of where it is, where we are in the league stage. There's games to play, right, and anything can happen. But I think it's a warning. It's a warning shot by Sundowns to say that if you are the guys who are challenging us, you need to do better. to the tune of 4 goals, the tune of domination, to the point where when Pirates scored the goal back, you're like, okay, at least we can say we were in it. You know, the scoreline may flatter us a bit, but when 3 came in, you're like, it's gone. 4 came in, you're like, okay, this is demoralizing. So I think because of the number of games played, I think, Jay, we can't rule them out at this point in time, right? But I think if these are the guys that you're chasing, it makes it a tall order. After this game, it makes it even tougher, I think.
There is the idea that when you're going for a league title, you don't have to beat your direct rivals to win the league. I don't think that applies to Sundowns. I think you have to beat Sundowns. And Orlando Pirates do, of course, have Sundowns coming to Escotini at some point, and you think that if they are going to go on to overhaul Sundowns, they have to beat them. Not even draw, they have to beat them in that game. But I think this was a title decider. I think it's a 9-point gap now, and there's a game in hand, but games in hand don't automatically equal wins. And the other thing is something that you mentioned, which is the depth. I think for me, for Pirates to win the league title, they had to go into April and May ahead of Mamelodi Sundowns, where Sundowns are chasing. The reason for that is because I still generally think right here as I'm sitting that Orlando Pirates are going to feel the sting of a long season come April and May. And not only because it really has just been a long season from the qualifiers in the Champions League to the MTN8 and everything else in between, where it's the league and it's the Cups and it's the Champions League. But because of how they've utilized their squad, it's really only 13 to 15 players who have been consistently representing Orlando Pirates. And I don't think you can be competing at the level that they have been for as long as they will be doing in this season, and still have fresh enough legs to go get the results that you are going to have to get later on in the season. When you see what Mamelodi Sundowns are doing, inexplicably, we would not have thought that they can go even a level higher from last season. But 15 games, 42 points. This team is looking like they're going to touch 80 points. If they drop off, we're talking about like 75 points or so. I don't think Orlando Pirates are going to have the horses or the legs to go and get the requisite number of points come the end of the season to do it. And now, because there's a gap, now there's the constant pressure where you are chasing and you're aware of the fact that you go to games, they are all must-wins. It feels like they're all must-wins. And the combination of that fitness and that pressure, I think, eventually will tell. And that is something that was precipitated by this game, where Sundowns not only got the 3 points, but they got it convincingly. So I think there's a psychological thing that might come into it. Well, we have to see, because Pirates are also a champion team based on what they've done in the cup competitions. Also, Rivera strikes as a personality that is able to manage like the individuals through crises as well. So maybe that might be mitigated a bit. But yeah, when you come into that match where you know you're chasing Sundowns, and there's the feeling that this might finally be our season, whereas we've been looked upon for so long to be the team that's going to go and break the monopoly of Sundowns, and then you come away from it not with a man, we were robbed or we missed like these sitters, where you know that we're that close, and if this or that had gone our way, would have had them. But it's convincing in the end. And also what you found is a Sundowns team that adapted to what you did against them previously. So yeah, I think overall it's a big victory that Sundowns had. It's a big blow struck against Orlando Pirates, and I know we're only halfway through, but I think the league is already gone for Orlando Pirates.
Wow. Look, I would say this, it's not quite definitive as yet. Jay says for sure the writing's on the wall. And what was definitive in the FA Cup this weekend is that Liverpool are no longer a part of it. Spurs are no longer a part of it. Chelsea as well are also out of the FA Cup. Jay, first and foremost, to whom do you think it's more damning to having exited the cup at this stage? Do you think Chelsea season suffers more because they left the FA Cup? Do you think Ange, Mr. Every 2 seasons I win a cup, his exit is a bigger blow? Do you think Slot, who's on the chase for a quadruple?
First of all, I'm going to tell you to whom it's more comforting. To Arsenal fans, right? Because you know by yourselves, and at least Arsenal got knocked out by Manchester United. I know Manchester United, they look the way that they look in the league, but it's still Manchester United. You know, like, I don't know. I think as an Arsenal fan, you can hang your hat on the fact that it was not Plymouth, and the other 2 teams you mentioned were, of course, also knocked out by Premier League sides, but not the 13-time champions of the FA Cup. So there are levels.
Thank you, Jay. That's indirectly. There's some praise in this dismal season for Man United.
Chuck, but man, it's a tough one because it's another season where Liverpool were in quadruple conversation, which is actually, I know they don't go on to win the quadruple, but the fact that they that's something that continuously comes up for them, I think is a boon. You know, I think it's something that is, I mean, not worth celebrating, but it says something about the success consistently that they seem to garner across all different competitions, because once again they're in the Carabao Cup final and they topped the expanded Champions League group, and they are, of course, have a healthy lead in the Premier League. The fact that they lost against Plymouth, who were almost relegated if they'd stayed with Wayne Rooney, and have been struggling this season in the Championship is that's the biggest shock, right? That is the biggest shock in terms of results. You did not see that one coming. But Chuck, I think it's most damning for Spurs, because I look at a Chelsea, and I think Chelsea should go on to win the Conference League. If they don't win the Conference League, then it's another season where they haven't won anything. And now we're going back 5 seasons since they last won the Champions League, and outside of the Champions League, they haven't actually won anything else, you know. And the Champions League is so big that it does give you a cushion.
It's a buffer,
for it is a buffer, yes, for a long while. But when we're talking about Chelsea specifically, and we're talking about 5 years now since they last won anything and going into a 6th year, and we've heard their coach Maresca talking about the fact that they don't, he's not looking at them challenging for the league for another 2 or 3 seasons. And now what you're talking about at that point, where you are successful enough where you're going to qualify for Europa or the Champions League, and of course you're still competing in the Carabao and the FA Cup. If it's 2 or 3 seasons before you're qualifying, where you're competing for the league, does it not apply that it's maybe the same thing unless something goes your way in the cup competition as well? Now we're talking about, we're looking towards a decade. But I even with that in mind, I still think it's Spurs. And with Ange at Spurs specifically, because yes, we know Spurs haven't won anything since 2009, and they're not a team you look to winning anything, right? But having been knocked out the way that they were in the Carabao, where they were close, they were in the semi-final, they had the lead from the first leg, and then they were dismantled in that second leg. So that's gone. It's gone. They know nowhere close, of course, in the Premier League, and now in the FA Cup. And yes, it is against Aston Villa, who are a Champions League team, but it shows that these two teams have changed positions, you know, where Aston Villa are a very good side, where Spurs aren't. And it does not matter where they compete. It does not matter what they try. Yes, they've got a lot of injuries, you know that, but it just keeps getting worse. Where you might be looking for a silver lining, there is none that is coming around the way. So yes, as I'm saying, while I recognize that the biggest shock was Plymouth knocking out Liverpool, and you have a Chelsea who lost against a Brighton, who previously, last time we saw them on a football pitch, they lost 7-0 themselves, but they are still a good side, and which Aston Villa are as well. But I think the compounding of issues at Spurs under Ange, where maybe a deep run in the FA Cup and even going on to win it, that would have solved everything, you know, because Spurs are not choosers. They'll take anything that is a trophy, they will take it. So to have the season in the first week or so of February be absolutely done, and the way that it is, it's a spectacular failure even for Tottenham Hotspurs.
Wow, Jay, said by someone who's a proper rival. Wow, I look at
Spurs are not rivals, Shaq.
Yet again, damning from
an derby. And I told you this the other time. The reason even Spurs find themselves in the Big Six is because they are success adjacent, because they're neighbors to Arsenal, who dragged them into a room because, these are North London rivals. It's like, okay, here's Manchester United, Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool. I suppose you are here now as well.
Might as well talk about you.
Yeah.
I think I look at the fact that, let me see if I can get round to my conclusion. If you look at the fact that Liverpool lost Klopp, and obviously it's a big change, right? And so far, the only thing to have gone wrong is them not getting knocked out of the FA Cup. not too bad if you look at it from that perspective, right? Because top of the league, top of the Champions League, still, eligible for the Final Four for the Carabao Cup. Most likely our favorites as well going to that one. So not too bad if you look at it that way, right? And then we look at Chelsea and Spurs. Their form hasn't been great of late. Obviously, Spurs has been horrible, right? And so if I look at who Spurs are at this moment, was I expecting anything from them? Is it really damning that they got out yet again, lost another match because they've lost, I think, 7 of their last 8 games in the league? Not too much of a surprise, right? And then Chelsea, after spending all that money and having found some sort of form and having put a run together and have had a settled 11 in terms of here's who we trust. I think you think to yourself in terms of, okay, they went out against Premiership opposition, but when do they turn around this season? When does their season become decent, right? Then you look on their continental exploits. They still have the Conference League that is Chelsea. I think Spurs are still in the Europa. I think, if not, whatever. But I think because they always talk about the quadruple and they never get it, I wonder to myself, right? Will you then have a season where you've just bagged yourself the Carabao Cup and just that because the FA Cup you're out? I don't know, because the league is still tight. Champions League is anyone's guess in terms of what's going to go. It can be, Jay, because okay, not tight, but Arsenal are close enough to push them. And they seem to have fixed their affairs and they're looking to go on a run. So what I'm saying is that it's still too early to then say to Liverpool are taking it. It's not as shoehorned in as the Carabao Cup, where I think they're overwhelming favorites. I think the league for me looks like the Champions League in terms of you guys look good right now. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2-3 months. I look at that, Jay, and I think to myself, then in terms of the team, of the players who were there against Plymouth Argyle, 8 of them are first team regulars. Your Darwins, your Elliots, your Endos, not regulars, but they play enough league game where you're like, okay, you guys are not properly all the way fringe players. Jota was also playing. So you think to yourself, shouldn't you guys get it over the line? And I wondered then to myself, are these guys capable of being called upon? And obviously, yes, that's the magic of the FA Cup. These upsets do happen. They don't necessarily define your season. But I wondered to myself that would it give confidence to someone like Darwin Núñez, Jota, who we know at this point in time, rather, you've got your Cody Gakpo, you've got your Mo Salah, and you've got your Luis Diaz. That's the preferred lineup for Slot. If injuries go down because you've been given a chance against Plymouth and you guys didn't pull it through the fire, do these guys have enough to get them all the way? So I think for me, in terms of who this team is, Liverpool, supposed to be all conquering, supposed to be top, the best team in Europe, top of the pile in the Premier League. This is more damning. It's a shock, but it's also more damning because I look at Spurs and I look at Chelsea and I'm like, that's how things are going. If United were knocked out by Leicester, that's how things are going currently. So I think for me, in terms of who they are and what they can do, this is more damning.
Yeah, most definitely the most shocking. Chuck also says it is the most damning that Liverpool got knocked out by lowly Plymouth. And on my side, I think it is Spurs. Tell us what you think. Maybe you have Chelsea and all of the money, as Chuck mentioned, that they've spent. Chuck, a man who has made all the money in the world and around whom there are very little questions about what he's done in his football career. But a question has been thrown up, and that is Cristiano Ronaldo, who, of course, turned the big 40 last week. And he made some interesting comments where he said that you mentioned Messi, Maradona, or Pele, but he reckons that he is the most complete footballer when you consider right foot, left foot, header, and he can jump. That's what he also said, and everything else that is the package of the footballer that has been Cristiano Ronaldo. He reckons he is the most complete footballer there ever has been. Do you agree with this opinion of Cristiano Ronaldo?
Definitely agree, 100%. Because, and I say this because if you ever listen to the Messi Ronaldo debate, that's what you bring to the party. I mean, what else are you going to bring? Because you're like left foot, as he says, in the scoring charts with his weaker foot, he's there. With the right foot, the numbers are there. Heading-wise, in the charts as well. The number of goals, heading ability is there as well. Athleticism, which is speed, jumping. I mean, obviously his speed has since left him, but he can still jump. So I think that's what you bring to the table if you want to crown him goals in terms of, well, what else would you want from a player? Put on his left foot, he'll score. Put on his right foot, his favorite foot, he'll most likely score even more. If that's the 90%, that's the 95%. Put it in the air, he'll head the ball. Lob it over, he'll beat the defender. So that's what you bring to the party in terms of most complete. I mean, we've seen players grace the pitch who are magical, right? Like Ozil, but heavily dependent on his left foot. They're rarely players where you're like, put on either side. most likely will be the same result. So in terms of most complete, that's the argument that you bring if you want to say that he's the GOAT. There's no other argument because we know that Messi is the more naturally talented. He's the more magical player. But in terms of if you want to tick every box, that's your man.
You know what issue I've always taken with the assessment of Ronaldo is like when he mentions that he can jump, right? When you think of his athleticism, I mean, it is of course something that puts you over the top in terms of your competitors. I don't know if I always think like an athletic skill is necessarily the same thing as a football skill, which is something I personally not maybe considered all that greatly when I weigh it up in terms of what is a complete footballer. I think of specific football skills where it is passing, it is dribbling, it is shooting, right? So in that regard, do I think that Cristiano Ronaldo is the most complete footballer of all time? I think he's the most diverse goal scorer probably we've ever seen, because the things that he's counting are things that have aided him in terms of goal scoring. Because when he's talking about his right foot and left foot, in my mind, he's talking about scoring, right? And when I think of him as a goal scorer, I think of the tap-ins. And I don't say that as people mock him for that, because you go try tapping it in that many times. Or who's your favorite striker who's been able to be in that position and finish from those spots as often as he has? But then he's scoring that goal against Porto. You know, he's got that in his locker, and then he's got headers in his locker. You put it up into the box. Like Ronaldo can play as a traditional number 9, as they love it in over there in the British Isles, and he can also like hit the curlers. But that's as a goal scorer, right? When I think the most complete footballer, I don't know about all time, but in my mind, the player that always comes up is Wayne Rooney. Like when I think complete footballer, I always think of Wayne Rooney, and I wanna say Rooney is a more complete footballer than Cristiano Ronaldo. And so what I mean by that and why I say that, right, is if the question is not like who did it at a higher level, I don't think Wayne Rooney is a comparable goal scorer to Cristiano Ronaldo. But there are very few Cristiano Ronaldo goals, I'd say any, that Rooney could not perform. He could hit the ball, maybe not as great as Ronaldo, but he could shoot. He could be in the box and be a fox in the box and finish those goals. He can do overhead kicks. And then where I think he has the edge over Cristiano Ronaldo is if we are removing him from being a forward, Wayne Rooney could play in the middle, genuinely could play in the middle. Now, you wouldn't build a championship team around him as a midfielder, but there was a stretch there where Sir Alex Ferguson was reliant on Wayne Rooney to drop a little deeper, and he did not look out of place. He's a footballer. I feel like Wayne Rooney is a footballer who you can put him anywhere and he can do a very good job in those positions. I don't think you can do that as often and in as many positions with Cristiano Ronaldo, because the other side is Wayne Rooney could also defend. He's never played as a defender because he's that great going forward. But in terms of that side of the game as well, I think he can do that, whereas you can't say the same thing of a Cristiano Ronaldo. This is not to say that Rooney is anywhere close to being a greater player than Ronaldo. But I think complete footballers, I think Wayne Rooney.
Interesting shout here, because if you use your metric, dribbling, I think that falls in Cristiano Ronaldo's favor. Shooting, that falls in his favor. Passing, obviously, Wayne Rooney wins that. But I think Ronaldo's passing is above average. And so I think you're not necessarily always ticking 90th percentile, but if it's above most of your peers at that level, I think that describes it as complete, would you not say? Because they were in the same team together, and at some point, Alex Ferguson says, like, you feed this guy, you work for this guy because we're going to get more from this guy. Do you not then think that
as
that
the
is
goal scorer? And that's what I think, right? And I think you can ask Rooney to vacate the position we saw him coming into the game as a striker, and you're not dropping him to the bench, but you are saying facilitate, because he can do that, right? And when you say Ronaldo's shooting is better than Rooney's, I don't think so. I don't think it's better. Again, like I think when you look at volume of goals, when you look at production, I think it's easy to say, well, the ability to do this was greater in the one player, right? Or the skill was greater in the one player. But when I think of Rooney's goals, they are so diverse. Like if I pick out examples, right? You think of the Newcastle Rockets. You think of Wayne Rooney in his Champions League debut. He's scoring a free kick. I can't really say that Ronaldo is head and shoulders a better free kick taker than Wayne Rooney. And as I'm saying, like as a striker, Wayne Rooney could give you goals, and then everything else that he could give you as a footballer outside of the goals, I think there is clarity. There's distance. You say Ronaldo is not is above average as a passer, and I agree. I think Wayne Rooney is an immaculate passer of the football. I don't. You could not probably even name anyone who you consider as a forward who was better, like with a pass, than Wayne Rooney. He was better than so many other midfielders as well in that regard. And as I'm saying, then there's the defensive side of the ball. I think about although that was in the MLS, that assist where he's tracking back and he puts in the slide tackle, and then he hits the diagonal 60 meters into the box and they score from that. I can't see Ronaldo doing that. And
okay, I take that, and I think all of the from my side at least, all the comparisons never to give any or to throw any slight or any shame towards Rooney, because he's been a good footballer. But in my mind here, when I think about this, that when he was there with Ronaldo, so Alex Ferguson said you drop deeper and facilitate his success, right? When I think about him dropping into midfield, never quite worked out for England. So what I'm trying to get at is that in the striking position, we're like, we found our Ronaldo, you work for him. In the midfield, there are better players. There's a Gerrard, there's a Lampard, so we don't quite need you there. So as complete as he was, he never quite fully took charge of any position, because there was someone else all the time in those particular positions where he is complete. So I don't know if that is something that doesn't necessarily make him complete, or is that a different argument altogether?
And when Rooney is concerned, I think he's become underrated over time because I'm always reminded when I'm looking through the stats, like Wayne Rooney's in the top 4 of both goals scored and assists all time in the Premier League. I definitely think if I move away a little bit into, I think Thierry Henry is the greatest Premier League footballer of all time, but I think when that conversation is had, Wayne Rooney's name does not come up nearly as often as it should when you just look at his raw numbers. And then when you consider the player, which is why I'm able to put him up as, I think he was more complete than Ronaldo, and I think he was the most complete footballer of my time watching football, at least. All right, Chuck. Moving on to the world of MMA. I don't know if I want to say our own.
I know, just not your champion.
But Dricus Du Plessis, DDP, in that middleweight fight, the rematch against Sean Strickland, he came through as a unanimous winner after 5 rounds. And only one of the judges did not give him every single round, but it was a pretty convincing win against Sean Strickland. What did you make of that bout at UFC 312?
Trump's boy beat Trump's boy. I don't know if you can make sense of that. He gave him all the beating that the Afro Forum can hand to someone. And I think, man, Sean, I think one of the analysts said it better in terms of, you're not the guy that you sold this. You said you want to fight to the death. You said, let's make a pact, let's fight, what. And you never brought any of that. And I think that's disappointing in terms of Sean Strickland, because if you want the belt, you have to take it. You don't just edge it. You don't just, I think I'll give it to him. If you want the belt, you go out there and you fight. That's why in the first fight, when you look at that fight, as contentious as it was, what Dricus was bringing was roundhouse kicks, was elbows, was takedowns, was forward pressure all the time. Whereas, as he says jokingly, that all Sean Strickland gives you is a jab and a teep kick, and that's what he did as well in this other fight. And you're like, dude, you said you wanted the belt back. You said you wanted to make things clear, set the record straight that you won that one. You didn't do that. So on Sean's part, very disappointing. But on Dricus' part, I think well handled in terms of measuring each round, doing what's necessary for each round, and then putting on the pace. I think in round 3, 4, and 5, he broke his nose. I think he was obviously more dominant, and I think in his first fights in a long time, it didn't look awkward. I don't know if that's because he didn't have to push as much. He wasn't as desperate to win a fight, but he looked more composed. He looked more technically sound, I would say. So I think good showing, and I think it puts him in a good spot right now, because not only did you defend your belt, now people are thinking, okay, how does he fare against Chimaev? How does he fare against Pereira? Because now he's on a win streak, number one. Number two, he doesn't look as awkward, he looks more composed. He executed one takedown, but he didn't need takedowns to win against Strickland. So I think good showing all in all. You can't really complain about that.
Yeah, Chuck, on the side of Sean Strickland, you gave us nothing.
That
And
hard.
and his cornerman kept on asking him to do more, and he seemed as if he was ignoring them and was not taking the advice on board. And it was rather strange for me because it was very obvious, other than maybe that third round, that Dricus was ahead, right? And you wanted to see more, but he didn't give more. And on the side of Dricus though, Chuck, what I saw over the weekend was a fighter who's growing in terms of the strings to his bow, right? Because as you say, he didn't look awkward. He looked more technically sound. I mean, he didn't even try a takedown until like late in the third round for the first time, and then he did it maybe once or two other times. The fact that he didn't feel that he needed to go to that, in my mind, I was looking at that and thinking, there's a game plan that's been prepared here, and there's also a challenge that has been set to him in terms of, this is where we want to go. This is the next evolution that we want to see of you as a fighter from his camp, and he stuck to the plan, because he even spoke about the fact that when he saw the broken nose and the blood gushing from the nose of Sean Strickland, of course those are shock infested waters at that point, and you want to go in for the kill. And he says that he was excited, but then he pulled back because and as I'm saying, he seemed to be thinking about the fact that he must be disciplined, and he was, right. And in terms of him coming up against the guy who's a striker, and he traded blows with him and came out on top, is it's exemplary on his end. And the fact that the awkwardness that came out was for Sean, because he's kicking and punching at the same time. This is DDP. Like, it's coming from all corners. Like, he used his kick very well, particularly his high kick to keep Strickland off balance. And overall, it was such a polished fight from him. And when you do know that he's got that explosiveness, he's got the takedowns in him, and he is able to go to that game plan if he needs it, I think this spells like danger time for future opponents, because, as I'm saying, it seems as if the skill set has grown.
I think last on Sean Strickland, Jay, I think other than being knocked out by Alex Pereira, he's been beaten obviously before, right? But no one has knocked him out. And Dricus himself said that he's tough. And if people say you're tough and you know you're tough, sometimes bite down on the gum shield and go for it, because you are going to take punches, and you can take punches and try to execute your game. Because I think he was interviewed by Brett Okamoto, and they were like, dude, every time we see your videos online where you're in the gym sparring or you're beating up a YouTuber, you're pushing the pace, you're putting on the beat down. Why don't we ever see that in the cage? And he was like, well, these guys in the cage are high level. Give me someone who's weak and I'll do that to you, do that for you every other day. But the guys who are high level, I have to be cautious about. I can respect that. But if you want the belt, and if you know that you're tough and you can take most of these punches, why not? Because if you're saying to the death, is this not the time to go to the death in search for glory, in search for the belt? They didn't show up. As you're saying, the cornerman was saying, my man, you have to do more than what you did. You're doing the same thing as the last fight. Do more. Okay, you need a knockout now. There was same output from Sean Strickland. So, well, a total shout out, and there are no complaints about this one.
Where DDP is concerned, afterwards, he said that he's definitely top 3 pound for pound. Do you agree with that?
I think the rankings will get him high because, I mean, every win counts in your favor, right? And so there will be Islam ahead of him. There will probably be Alex Pereira ahead of him. And the guys who would have been ahead of him have since lost. So someone like a Leon Edwards will probably regress and go down. Someone like a Valentina Shevchenko has gone down as well. So I think maybe he goes there, but I wouldn't put him that high personally. I wouldn't.
Because I'm thinking of the guys that you counted out. There's Islam, there is Pereira. I think Elieto Pereira, but pound for pound might still be better than DDP. Would you have anybody else ahead of him?
It could be Elieto Pereira, but I think the thing is the number of fights at the top level, because he's just brought out of nowhere. Because like, oh, this guy's actually good. Then he beats Volk, and then he beats Smash, and you're like, okay, this guy's properly good. So I don't know if that already shoves you to the top, because obviously the resume Dricus is not too shabby, right? There's Izzy, there's Strickland twice, there's Robert Whittaker as well. So you're like, okay, this guy's decent. And also as being champion, because I think when you hold gold, it holds a bit more weight. Ahead of him, Jay, I think I don't have Bilal Muhammad. I know it's not just a striking thing, but Bilal Muhammad is boring. I don't want to put him at the top of any pound for pound. So not him. Usman has been inactive. Let me see.
Jones?
No, inactive. He's staying as pound for pound all the time, but I think we need activity.
Yeah.
I think
need to see you.
If you look at Pantoja can go up higher than him. I think he's done well. Marab can go ahead of Dricus, but I think only those two names. Then it's fair at that point.
And then final question on this one. Of course, the question is there no one else? Who do you think should be next? Should it be Chimaev or should it be Alex Pereira?
I think, well, according to Dricus, he wants to clean out the middleweight division first and then move up to 205. And I don't know how much time he has, and I don't know what his schedule looks like. Maybe he might fit in 2 fights, which means maybe the Chimaev, maybe Imavov if he defends both titles, then Pereira at the start of next year. That would be ideal for him, right? But because there's this intrigue, Jay, because he's beating Whittaker, so has Chimaev, who else have they fought in common? I can't think of anyone else. But it seemed like, even though the rankings don't show it, that he's the boogeyman. He's the guy who should be next. He's the guy who's making a tear in the division, right? So I think it makes sense because the questions are always there. The questions won't go away. We have to answer the Chimaev question in terms of Dricus Du Plessis and then Pereira, because I think also you don't go Pereira then Chimaev, because I think the power that's up there, it might just derail you. Do Chimaev. If you go past that, then you're buoyed and you're like, okay, I can conquer the world. You go to Chimaev, because as I said, Dricus says of Strickland that it's hard to put away, not according to Pereira. So it's steps, baby steps. Do Chimaev first, and if you go past that, then go to Pereira.
Yeah, we'll see if Trump's man is able to trump over everybody that comes against him, because he's laid down the challenge, and don't take nothing away from me. He looked good, and if you're gonna step into the ring with DDP, you better have your A game on that day. We'll see where he does end up, but it's quite intriguing what he's been able to do in the middleweight division.
All right, Jay. Lastly, now we go to, if I remember, SA20. I almost forgot about that. MI Cape Town, for the first time, the champions of SA20, after having beaten the defending champions who were looking to make it a three-peat. And that final did not go according to script, because from sources we know and trust in terms of their opinion in cricket, the winners of either Paul Royal or the winner between, Paul Royal and Sunrisers Eastern Cape would be strong enough to dethrone MI Cape Town in the final. It didn't happen that way. They batted first, put together a formidable score. Rickleton was good, but when it came to Sunrisers Eastern Cape, what happened there, Jay? Because they didn't show up in the final.
Yeah, my Cape Town were the best team from start to finish, and that was well deserved. What they did this season, which they failed in the previous 2 seasons, where they finished like bottom of the log. They had the names, right, but they didn't show up. Where you thought, well, just put them out on the field and it's going to work out, but it didn't. Change of captains, Rashid Khan coming through as the captain this season, and I think the addition of Trent Bolt was the bolt of lightning that they needed up their arm. And in the final as well, it did come down to the bowling. You had Kagiso Rabada, who took 4 wickets, and you had then Trent Bolt coming through with a 2 for 9. In 4 overs in the final. And he said in the press conference that he had said to Rashi after his first 3 overs that, let me go 4, because it was in good rhythm and he was feeling it, and he was putting the squeeze on the Sunrisers Eastern Cape in their chase. So I think the combination of Trent and Kagiso Rabada, and then you had George Linda coming through with his spin as well, and as I'm saying, perhaps the greatest T20 bowler of all time. Maybe spin, because Bumrah has a great big shot in that one in the form of Rashid Khan. He also then contributed in that one. So they had the best bowling lineup in the tournament. And they also had the best batting lineup in the tournament as well. And their fielding was not too shabby when you consider the things that young Previs was able to do in the field, one of which we saw live in person in that first game against JSK, what he did on the boundary, and that ridiculous catch as well, which was the catch of the season. And in terms of the batting, some Previs came into his own this season. And once again in the final, when they had good momentum, a great start from those 2 openers who have been great, even when my Cape Town have not been good as a team in previous seasons, with Rickleton and Van der Dissen at the top of the innings. They gave them a great start, and then when Rickleton goes out, because at some point he was striking at a 255, I remember seeing on the scoreboard, you think to yourself, maybe this is the opening that the Sunrisers needed. But then you've got Esterhuizen coming through. Then you have a Previs coming through, even though Ariza gets attacked in the final. But Riza has been good throughout the season. So it's a multi-headed snake, Chuck. You cut off one and you still have to deal with the others, And so I think it really didn't matter who you got out. There was always a next man in who was willing to put his hand up. And in terms of the Sunrisers in the chase, was disappointed with Malcolm in sliding himself down the order, because there's a point where I think where he could have come in, and then he even sends a Tom Abel ahead of him. And I was thinking to myself, watching him there sitting in the dugout, like, what are you doing? Your team needs you. This is the final, and you've been their best batsman this season. For the most part, Sunrisers have gone as Malcolm has gone, you know. And by the time he comes in, there's so many wickets down, there's so many runs to get, and the run rate has ballooned. And yes, he's out there with Dezozi. Yes, he's out there with Stubbs, but it's a bit too late to try go mount a challenge. But ultimately, I don't think any team could have shown up at the Bullring on Saturday against that my Cape Town outfit and won the game against them. As I noted when I look back through their games, right? I think, if not the entirety of the season, just the last bulk of their games, they have not been held below 140. This is my Cape Town, except for in games that were rain affected. So it was a behemoth in the batting lineup, and it was matched by the bowling. And of course, I mean, those are the two sides to the game, right? Yeah. And if you have the best of both in those departments, there's not much anyone can do, even the two-time defending champions.
I think Rabada was key in that final, Jay. I think those 4 wickets were key in terms of restricting them from playing, restricting them from actually going out. Because if you look in contrast to what MI Cape Town did with Rickerton up front, very from the very first over, he started firing away right at the beginning of the innings. He goes out, and then he's saying, "This is to continue the work. There's Esther Hazen, there's Brevis still," and I just keep going and going and going, right? And I thought to myself, maybe they throw away their wickets because you get to like 30 odd, 20 odd, 40 odd, and you're out, right?
Yeah, it felt like, Jack, they'd hit a 6 and then they'd go out.
Yeah,
like it happened so many times, and you think to yourself, maybe don't try go for the boundary again. Like, just take a single or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Sunrise Eastern Cape, they didn't have that because the pressure was on from ball number 1, and they never quite started well. And I mean, when you look at the 10 over mark, MI Cape Town were poised to even go to 200, right? Obviously, the wickets came into play, and obviously didn't get to that particular total. But I think when you look at how they paced themselves in that innings and how they utilized the top 3, sometimes Uriza would open, and sometimes he would fail, and therefore we'd come to number 3, and you're like, okay, let's get a better platform before we send you in, and not have that as much pressure on you. So I think things like that, Jay, were very good. Obviously, the bowling, like we said, with Rabada, with Sunrisers Eastern Cape, they never quite looked settled in that chase. By the time Stubbs is coming in to try to save things, it's a bit too much. By the time Janssen is coming in, by the time even Markram comes in chase, a bit too much to manage, because wickets are falling on the other side. You're trying to score at a quick rate, so you have to swing your bat. You're in a position where you can't play within yourself. You can't knock the ball around and get yourself in. You have to go from the first ball, and the conditions don't quite agree to that. So I think in terms of management of the final, MI Cape Town were great. Fielding as well, because the captain himself put himself in the best spots to take catches. How many catches do you have in the final? Like, what, 4 catches or something like that? So I think overall, in terms of what they plan to do and how they set out to do it, MI Cape Town was just the best. Yeah,
congratulations to MI Cape Town, and the Mumbai Indians franchise have won everywhere they've played. Trent Poulter was talking about the fact that this is his 4th championship with this franchise, and it's good as well to see a new champion. Nothing against the three-peat, I'm a man for history, but to get a dynasty from the get-go, maybe you start wondering, what's the competitive landscape? You know, even though it is competitive, but then when you have the same winner every single time, it gets boring very quickly for people. So I think the competition as well in its 3rd season needed a new champion, and they got it in the form of my Cape Town. So congratulations to those boys. That is the end of this particular episode of To Up Front. Thank you for listening in. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Please like our videos. Please comment in our videos. We absolutely love hearing from you and responding back to you, and share the content far and wide. We appreciate all of those who do. You can continue the conversation with us as well across all social media platforms. It is at 2Upfront Pod. I am at J_Mzulu, and Chuck is at Chuck2Up. From myself, Jay, Hamaudi.
Sundowns were overwhelming, were powerful, were destructive, and they beat Pirates for 1. But if there's people who need to improve, it's the groundsman. What a pitch.